Welcome to the show. My name is Charlton with Big C. This is Charlton and Big C Sports. Wishing everyone a very happy Independence Day, happy 4th of July. And we do it Monday through Friday worldwide at 5 o'clock p.m. Pacific Standard Time on Charlton and Big C Sports. And I know that everybody all over the country is celebrating the 4th of July, but also throughout the world you have fireworks going off everywhere in Big C. And I just want to thank everyone for being a part of our show. And this Independence Day is so important to me because it's not just about our country having its independence. I want to focus on dedicating this show to the people that each individual has to have their own independence. So we thank you for all of your support down in Latin America. So bienvenidos to you. Also, I want to thank Lee Steinberg. Thank you for your tweet. Lee Steinberg, one of the top sports agents out there, listening to Charlton and Big C Sports as well. And also your listeners over in London, England, the great Berlin, Germany. Jesse Owens had a great showing of the Olympics there. And the great nation of Canada. And, of course, the United States of America. Big C, happy 4th of July. How's your Independence Day treating you, Big C?
Well, Charlton, the same to you and your family. You know, this morning got up and had to throw that little pig out on the grill. I didn't think he was ever going to stop screaming, you know. It took a while. There's people walking outside trying to find out what was going on, but eventually he got quiet.
Okay, well, Big C, that's funny. You're going to have all your animal rights activists with their leather shoes saying you shouldn't eat swine, Big C. So be careful of all the hate mail you might get, Big C.
I'm not eating swine.
Okay.
I won't eat this little suckling pig. That's what I'm eating. I don't know nothing about no swine.
That is so funny. But I just want to thank all the people who, you know, I love what we do at Big C. So I really want to say I'm very appreciative of the fact that you said, let's start this program. We were at Salem Media, took their sports department up to number one in the country. They had 144 markets, and they hit budget for the first time in 44 years after what we were doing at that time. And, you know, you've been around the business over 40 years as an athlete and as a player, and then also in coaching and television and radio. And I've been around 27 years in the same industry. But what I love about it is the fact that sports is cathartic. And you know, Big C, you're down in the SEC country. You cover guys that play football 24 hours a day, unlike here in California. But, you know, the sports world, okay, and they are good, and I think USC is going to do the smackdown in the kickoff classic. But you know,
that's the greatest thing is that as an adult you're allowed to think.
Yeah,
you know, it's not that it's reality,
yeah,
but it's allowed to think. And I'm proud of you that you put on your thinking cap and you go into the game with a little bit of hope.
Yeah, that's
but you know, if you rearrange those letters and hope, you'll find out what the outcome of the game is going to be.
Well, you know, Jesse Jackson told us, keep hope alive, keep hope alive. So I think Lynn Swann bought into that message, and they actually scheduled that game against Alabama. But they brought back the great Lynn Swann just for that. But I
think when they scheduled that game, they had Pat Hayes as the AD and Steve Sarkisian as the head coach.
Yeah.
And so we know the alleged alcohol and drug abuse problems. You know, so they may not have been too cerebral at the time when they scheduled that game, you know.
Well, I think all they saw was the Ohio State game. That Ohio State went down and knocked off Alabama. They also studied up Oklahoma when the Sooners knocked them off the year before that. I think even Utah, part of the Pac-12 now, they also beat Alabama. So all the films they're watching are the teams that beat Alabama. I think Ole Miss did it last year as well, Big C. But I want to get on something that's, I think, important. This is our Independence Day, and we know that so many people are. I'm so grateful for all the people who fought for our country. And we know it's been a tough fight because when we celebrated our independence, you know, we had a lot of issues in the country. We still do, but, you know, America is about going forward and getting better, Big C. But I just want to get your thoughts on all this talk about athletes in the NBA trying to match what baseball is doing with these exorbitant contracts. And I think it's great because we are in a capitalistic society, and you should be able to make all the money you want to make, Big C. Your thoughts on that?
Well, Charlton, no one says anything when a Fortune 500 company makes a lot of money one day on Wall Street when the stock market rises. I mean, and like you said, there's 500 of those companies.
Yeah.
And those companies make more money than any NBA player could ever make. And, you know, what I see, Charlton, is the outcry about these NBA players making this type of money is that, 82% of the NBA is African-American?
Yeah.
And so people are crying about African-Americans getting economic equality.
Yeah.
No one cried about Andrew Luck last week getting $144 million. They praised him. Everybody wanted to pat him on the back and clap his hands.
And he's 3-3 in the playoffs. 3-3 in the playoffs.
And I think he won 2 games last season, Charlton. So, but when you look at that parallel, but not only that, the average American doesn't even know who the highest paid sports star in America is, Charlton. And he's a baseball player down in Florida with the Marlins. His name is Carlos Stanton, Charlton.
Yeah.
Carlos Stanton, remember that. His contract is $325 million.
Say that one more time, Big C.
$325 million is what Carlos Stanton's contract extension that he signed last year with the Florida Marlins. Now, and we also had Strasburg in Washington, I believe it was about 3-4 weeks ago, Charlton.
Yeah.
He signed a $175 million contract extension.
Yeah.
And so he only works 40 days out of the year. You think about that. You work 40 days out of the year, and you can sign a $175 million contract extension. You got a guy there in San Francisco, Bob Gardner, who makes $220 million, Charlton. You go down to Southern California, and you got Kershaw and Greinke, both making over $220 million. But the outcry is about the African-American basketball players, Charlton, making this money. No one cried about Andrew Luck. No one cried about any baseball players, but they're crying about the NBA players, Charlton. And the greatest entertainment spectacle on the planet, even more than the NFL, because it's continuous, consistent action. Yeah,
well, see, Big C, I think that's so important. And when Greinke went down to Arizona, he went just because he wanted that kind of money. I think Durant coming out of OKC, which, ironically, people are mad that Durant left Oklahoma City to go to Golden State, but Oklahoma City left the whole state of Washington, left the city of Seattle to go down to Oklahoma City.
Well, that was okay, Charlton. That was order leaving for more money, okay? He's allowed to do that. He's allowed to abandon the city, saying, I don't want to be here anymore. I'm going to go. I'm the ultimate free agent. I'm going to take all of my toys and leave you guys.
Well, didn't Spock tell us in Star Wars the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few? But when the ownership that took the Seattle Supersonics down to Oklahoma City, they did it because they wanted to hijack them and they wanted a new stadium, and the people in Washington were simply asking for more time to make it more fair. But they have a big economy up there with Boeing. They build Boeing jets up in Washington, up near Seattle.
Microsoft.
It's a great place to live, and it rains a little bit, but it's still a great place. But when it was time for them, Big C, to get up and go, they used their independence and they decided to pick up and go all the way across the country to play in Oklahoma City. So something I want to bring up, because I heard Stephen A. Smith, and I love his work, and there's also another. Chris Broussard, they've been covering sports for a long time, not as long as you, Big C, but they've been around a long time, and they were talking about Durant leaving. Now, Smith thought it's a bad thing that he left OKC because he went for the team that beat them in the playoffs. I think Stephen A. Smith is wrong in that. You go where you want to go. If Stephen A. Smith doesn't like it at ESPN, for whatever reason, if Fox comes calling and they write the check and the check doesn't bounce, I'm sure Stephen A. Smith would join Fox Sports 2 or ABC Sports or CBS or NBC Sports. Doesn't matter who you played for. We know that ESPN is owned by ABC, but in the game business, Big C, when teams or ownerships or networks say we're going to go a different direction, and I've heard it, I know you've heard it, they go a different direction. They don't ask you how you feel. They just decide they found somebody else, a new flavor of the month, and they're going to see what it looks like. And we've seen it all over the comp. If you look at ESPN and their desk, they've had about 10 big-name people leave in the last 2 years, and I know Stuart Scott passed away, but a lot of people leave. So I know Stephen A. works for ESPN, and sometimes he's controversial, but he's good. I think he's honest. Broussard was saying he can go wherever he wants to go because it's free agency. You do what you want to do. I agree with Broussard. Just like ESPN, if they say, hey, we're going to go a different direction, you don't sit there to argue and fight. You go do your own thing. Big C, your thoughts on that?
Well, 7 years ago when LeBron made his announcement and ESPN was so adamant about covering it, him going to Miami, all you heard was the big three. They're just going to win forever. Okay, as easy as he went to Miami, Charlton, he went back to Cleveland. And do you think he went back to Cleveland for less money? No, he didn't go back for less money. He didn't go to Cleveland for $14 million that he was getting in Miami. He went to Miami to win championships. He came back to Cleveland for money, and fortunately enough, he won a championship there. But, you know, this free agency carousel, Charlton, has been going on a long time. Yes, the money's gotten over $100 million in these contracts that these players are receiving. But you have to understand, Charlton, as we talked about last week, with the GMs and the owners, okay, nobody's cringing filling out that check or that contract.
Right.
They have no problem doling out the money. Now, when people talk about Durant going to Golden State, it's not the big three, it's the big four, Charlton.
Yeah.
This is a team that creates a matchup problem for everybody.
Yeah.
You got two of the best backcourt players in the NBA.
Yeah.
You got two of the best front court players in the NBA. So all you have to do is pencil somebody in the middle, and you have five guys also, Charlton, that can come off the bench.
Yeah.
So this is a team that's very dangerous. It reminds me of UNLV, University of Nevada, Las Vegas, back in the late 70s when Jerry Tarkanian coached this college basketball team, and they only had a 2-point shot, and they averaged 122 points a game over 40 minutes. They started shooting the ball coming out of the locker room, which is the same thing you see with Golden State. You got nothing but matchup problems, Charlton.
Well, see, Big C, you think about it, they have in Curry the last two MVPs, and they have Durant, so that's 3 years in a row. They have the MVPs of the league on their team. Also, you look at Andre Iguodala, he was the MVP in last year's final, so they have, in essence, guys over the last 3 years that have made up of 4 MVPs of something, either the league or the NBA finals, and I think it's great.
About Green, Charlton.
Yeah, Draymond Green. Yeah, Draymond Green also.
You know, this is a guy that can play.
Yeah.
So, like I said, where do you find the weakness? Why are people upset? Oklahoma City has the option to offer Durant the money prior to him signing with Golden State.
Yeah.
They didn't have to let him go out in free agency. They could have just opened up the bank and said, this is yours for 1 year.
Oh,
they were hesitant in doing that, Charlton. Just like when they got rid of Scotty Brooks last year, a coach said they'd take them to the playoffs every year they'd been there.
Yeah.
That wasn't good enough. Yet you have coaches in the NBA, Charlton, who can't even make it to 30 wins.
Yeah. And speaking of keeping a job, this segment is also sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealer, home of the all-new Escalade, the standard of the world. You can only get it new at your Northern California dealers. And when you go down and test drive it, tell them that Charlton and Big C sent you. Now, Big C, something I want to bring up too, because we know there's been so many athletes. We talked about Bogut being shipped out of Golden State now, and we have so many kids. Moscow, $64 million going to the Lakers. He was sitting on the pine in the NBA Finals. I think he played a total of 14 minutes, and that's worth $64 million. But I just keep this in mind. It's so egregious that we talk about how a lot of these guys, when we talk about how great they are as athletes, we neglect the side of the business side behind the scenes, Big C, that makes it all possible. Because you have owners, you have GMs, you had, Silver. And everybody, whether you look at Goodell in the NFL, there's always a business side of the game. And the sport is a business. What I would love to see is what Jim Brown touched on when we had the wonderful Muhammad Ali, celebration. And Jim Brown was on ESPN with Harry Edwards and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. And they were talking about something that I think is so important. They were saying, how can you give back to the black community? Or even the communities of color. It doesn't just have to be black. There's poor white kids too. UPS donated $500 million to the Ali Center, and that's in Louisville, Kentucky. And what I think, Big C, you talked about it first, and they just happened to show up on ESPN about a week later. But there's a guy by the name of Christopher Gardner. He was homeless at one time, but he pulled himself up, like Ronald Reagan said, by his own bootstraps, even though he had help. He became a stockbroker. Now he's a multimillionaire. Why is that important? That's important because that's not a mesmerizing position in the world of sports. But the guys who are in his position, they have a lot more autonomy in their lives, Big C, than the guys who play sports. So being a great athlete and being successful are not mutually exclusive. Some guys have a lot of money, but they lose a lot of money, Big C. So in The Pursuit of Happiness, made by Will Smith, and you've been in Hollywood and sports like the best of them, what can we learn from his story, Big C, that's more important to every youth that's listening to these guys getting these huge contracts? What's more important about being independently wealthy as a business person than an athlete, Big C? Your thoughts on that?
Well, Charlton, you have to look no further than Dan Gilbert, the owner of the Cleveland Cavaliers.
Yeah.
He also owns Quicken Loans, which is traded on the stock market, Charlton.
Yeah.
So he makes money whether he's selling a house or not, or refinancing.
Yeah.
he leverages his money in the stock market. And there's a lot of athletes who do that also.
Yeah.
You know, it's a way to make money. If you can play a video game, and these guys sit up Charlton and they play Madden, they play NBA, and they play baseball and golf, you can trade on the stock market because it's understanding movement, graphs, and numbers, Charlton. That's what it is. And it doesn't take a lot to get started in it. These players have a copious amount of money where they have no problem getting involved. But the average layman person, if you look at the amount of time you spend watching television during the day, and get in front of a computer, download an app such as a Ninja Trader, go in and they give you money, simulated money, to learn how to trade. They'll give you a couple $100,000, Charlton.
And
so if you get on the computers, learn how to trade with Ninja Trader. You don't have to trade with one contract at a time. You don't have to trade 10 or 20. But you will find out in minutes that you can make hundreds or thousands of dollars, Charlton. And that's what these people do. So it allows them to pay these great contracts to the players. But the player would rather go out and spend his money on a non-returnable, tangible product. Cars, houses, clothes, and jewelry.
Or Nike tennis shoes.
Owners reinvesting.
Even Nike tennis shoes, Big C. And I want to bring this up, too, because it's so important. And this segment is sponsored by your Northern California BMW dealer, home of the all-new the ultimate driving machine. And go down and test drive the all-new, super powerful 600 horsepower M7, also known as the 760 Li. And when you test driving it, let them know that Charlton and Big C sent you. So, Big C, this is so important to me because I thought about what Harry Edwards said, who was a professor emeritus out of Cal Berkeley, and of course Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and Jim Brown, and they were talking about when Ali had passed. Ali did so much to help people in his lifetime, and they're still doing things to help people now. We made the contrast with Tim Wise wrote a book. He's an author, a Jewish author, and he wrote a book called White Privilege, and it's about how society, from cradle to grave, it benefits Caucasian people. Not because anyone's any more erudite or more intelligent. It's just there's systems in place that we had. The Emancipation Proclamation was to try to make everything equal for everybody. But we know after we ended slavery, there were still some pillars of Jim Crow that made it difficult for people of color. Now, the one door that's opened up primarily, and maybe this is pejoratively speaking, but in the world of athletics, that's where you see more African Americans that are employed, at least on the playing fields, than there are Caucasians. Now, I'm sure behind the scenes in the front offices, there's mostly Caucasians that have the employment, Big C. But when it's football and basketball, it's mostly black talent that they go after. A lot of this talent comes out of the inner city, Big C. I think the push that Harry Edwards touched on, we can put the onus on players, but I think that's misguided. I think the corporations and the teams that own these great football and basketball and baseball franchises, if they could put back into the schools, the inner city schools, to invest in computers and in literature and teaching people math and science, you can start to pull yourself up by your own bootstraps. So when the NFL said go out and play 60 minutes a day, I think they got it wrong, Big C. They should say go out and read. Go out and read 60 minutes a day, because reading is fundamental. And just like Mark Zuckerberg, when he created Facebook, I think you said he created 180 millionaires, Big C? Is that what you said?
He did. Yes, he did.
How many of them had to jump and test their vertical leaping ability? How many had to run the 40 and 4.5 or faster? How many had to show that they could bench press 300 to 400 pounds? They did not. They used their minds, but when you get computers into the mind of a young person, it levels the playing field. Maybe it will take a year or two. Maybe it takes 5 years. But in the next 5 years, if we could flood the inner cities with the same type of tools they have in suburban schools, which teaches them math and science, they wouldn't care as much about running a 40 and 4.5 or bench pressing 400 pounds or trying to have a 40-inch vertical leap, Big C. Maybe you don't make 100 million, but you can make a few million, Big C. If that makes any sense?
The point that you make there, Charlton, is very valid. What they do, though, what do these kids get an opportunity to see on television, Charlton? They are bombarded with sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They don't know where the financial channel is, Charlton, on the television. But they can find a sporting event in a heartbeat. And if there's an NFL game on, it's the most watched event in America, Charlton. Second, the NBA. So when these events come on, and SportsCenter never talks about the education. They'll talk about somebody scored 30 points in a basketball, but they don't tell you what he majored in college. They don't say, well, he's only 3 credits away from getting his master's degree. That's not what they want to inform you about. It's like what you spoke about with the NFL Play 60. We don't want you to be intelligent. we want you to go out and be physically dominant.
Yeah.
I heard that the entire time, Charlton, I was growing up. You know, I remember when I went to college, and you had coaches riding you all the time, and this was years ago when you were still, I don't even know if they had Pampers out at that time.
I still got the Pampers, Big C. I still wear them.
You know, but you had coaches riding you. You have to be in the weight room. You got to go in and get your lifting in. They wasn't worried about you going to study hall. It was like you had to get your workout in. You had to have your book. You had to go through your time and your regimen of lifts. That was more important to them than what it was about what you did GPA-wise, whether you had to go to summer school or whatever. But you were going to get into the weight room, and after you got out of the weight room, you were going to go out and run stadiums, you were going to run laps, you were going to run sprints. They never talked about, Charlton, what's going on in class.
And see, Big C,
Where are we at?
that's so powerful because as we celebrate our nation's Independence Day, there also, like Dr. King talked about, there has to be a push for economics independence because, as you know, and you touched on something too that I kind of took for granted at the time, most young black boys growing up, because athletics are pushed on us, and just like a woman or a man in a relationship, if someone tells you how much they love you and how wonderful you are and how great you are, you tend to pay more attention to that person. However, in the classroom, I would challenge anyone to tell me if I'm wrong. Most black athletes, especially black boys, and I'm talking about elementary school, they are more loved for the athletic prowess than they are getting an A and a B on a test. I know that because it happened to me. Now, I think if I know that I didn't have a parent that could speak to me about it, I would probably fall by the wayside too, like the majority of people. But my parents made sure I got an education. That was always important. Athletics are great. But I look at this contract that's happening to young black men, and unfortunately it's a smokescreen because I hear young black boys saying, you know, I'm just going to work hard at my jump shot now. I'm going to work harder at my vertical leap now. I'm going to work harder at getting faster now. I just happen to have, the last couple of weekends, I've spent some time around, you know, parents that send their kids to private schools. Now, some of these private schools in the Bay Area, they're not talking about how they're going to have their kid lift more weights, how they're going to get bigger, stronger, and faster. They're talking about how they can get them ready for Ivy League education, which we know is a door to Wall Street and other financial institutions, whether you're in insurance or real estate or financial planning. And I hope that there can be a paradigm shift in the black community. And this is why I put the onus of the schools. And I know Jay Bill has talked about not paying student athletes is an antitrust violation. And I hope that every parent that has a coach come to your house, like Jim Harbaugh or whether it was whomever, ask them the graduation rate and the GPA of the players that already came to them. Ask them. We know Pete Carroll used to spend a lot of time down in South Central Los Angeles, and Pete Carroll was a great coach at USC, helped them win several Pac-10 championships at the time. How many of his kids graduated, Big C? And I know he had Reggie Bush and he had, you know, Matt Leinart, so many great quarterbacks, John David Booty, a lot of guys that played NFL football. But even with him, when things hit the fan at USC, Pete Carroll left and he went up to Seattle. He didn't bring any of those kids with him. Now, he played at UOP in Stockton, which is a private school. That's where he played college football. But just like you talked about, Big C, and Jim Brown was right, but you said it first. If we could bring math and science into the schools, at least computers, we could eradicate some of the poverty that so many young black boys are trapped in, Big C. Does that make any sense?
Well, Charlton, if you ever walk into a classroom, look at the first three rows across the class. Tell me how many African-American athletes are sitting in those rows in high school, Charlton, even in junior high.
Yeah.
They're sloughed back. If they're good, you know, you got a coach walking over and say, hey, I'm going to need to have him and have at least a seat.
Yeah.
Because we need him. We need to win. And that's what it's all about. That they need to win at the moment. They're not worried about that young man winning in life. Because once we won the game, once we won our league championship, once we won any title,
yeah,
we're good. Because there'll be somebody else. And what's going to happen, he's our advertising.
Yeah.
Is that all the rest of the young African-American athletes are going to see him and want to be like him. You know, it's like the commercial Nike did years ago back in the 80s.
Yeah.
I want to be like Mike. You know, and
who is Mike, Big C? Who is Mike? Big C.
I'm thinking that 75 to 80% of all African-American children born in America, the first pair of shoes they get is a pair of baby Jordans.
Yeah.
You know, this is what their parents feel, that they have to brand them, that if they get these Jordans on their feet, maybe they may emulate Jordan and become the next great basketball player. They don't think about getting them into a preschool program. They don't think about getting them into a Head Start program. They think about putting some Jordans on their feet and sticking them in front of a television.
Yeah.
Giving them a basketball, letting them dribble.
Now let me bring this.
None of them can spell or read, Joe.
Well, let me bring this up too, because this is not. It's not just about young black kids, even though the young black boys are the most exploited by the universities because they're the least likely to get an education. Now the young black girls tend to get educations. When they go to college, they tend to get a degree. And I mean, because they're not looking at the next multi-million-dollar contract for professional sports.
Well, Charlton, look at what Pat Summitt did during his lifetime, the coach we lost last week.
Yeah.
Everybody who finished their eligibility under Pat Summitt from 1974
amazing.
to 2012
amazing woman.
Graduated.
Yeah, amazing
they got
woman.
A degree from the University of Tennessee. That's how great Pat Summitt was. Throw aside her record.
Yeah.
Throw aside those wins, which she was the winningest coach percentage-wise of all time. But you got to look where she won off the court, Charlton.
Yeah.
She won the game of life for her players. Those players are forever grateful because they're professionals. They've gone on to be solid citizens. And that was because of Pat Summitt, Charlton, making sure that education was first. And think about this. If education is first, how easy is it to learn from the coach when she's teaching you a platform?
Isn't that amazing?
That's what happened with Pat Summitt, Charlton.
Isn't that amazing? Isn't that amazing, Big C? And I just want to say that this segment is also sponsored by your Northern California Ford dealer, home of the all-new F-150. They build it Ford tough. And when you go down that test drive, tell them that Charlton and Big C sent you. Also, BeneathHisWingsFoundation.org. Make a donation today. It's easy, it's fast, and secure. And when it comes to promotions, contact Cynthia Evans of CYNN Entertainment. When it comes to promotions, she's the best in Northern California. Let her know that Charlton and Big C sent you. Also, Big C, I want to bring this up too because the Independence Day for young African Americans, we know that I think they say about 1 out of every 5 African-American boys are under the tutelage of the criminal justice system, meaning on parole or probation, are brought into the system on some trumped-up charges. We talk about police profiling, and it happens in the black community. It's happened ever since we've been here. Now,
but Charlton, let's look at this.
Yeah.
And I can understand that happening 60 years ago, Charlton.
Yeah.
Because we had no rights. We had no voting rights. We had no equality. We had no juries of our peers. But today, this is what people buy into, Charlton.
Yeah.
When you refuse to get an education, when you want to walk around with your pants below your butt, you profile yourself, Charlton.
Yeah.
When you want to walk around with tattoos on your neck, all up and down your arm, on your face, and you can't speak proper English, Charlton, nor have you graduated from high school or college. You've set yourself up for that, Charlton. Where do you go? Who wants to hire somebody who walks in and his pants is below his butt, his underwear is up on his back, tattoos everywhere, Charlton? It's a fearful situation. You got all this fake weave in your head. You know your hair is not that long and braided down to the middle of your
I'm all shaved. I shaved my hair, Big C. I used to have a Jerry curl back in the day, but I'm more conscious now, Big C. I think my Jerry curl messed up all my clothes. I don't know who came up with that product, but I'm so glad they got rid of the Jerry curl, Big C, okay?
So when you set yourself up, Charlton, for non-opportunity, it's easy to say what society should do for the young African-American man, but the parent has to help that young African-American man first, and then he also has to be willing to help himself. It's like we talked about with Pat Summitt in Tennessee.
Yeah.
Now, the football program has always been there, just like the basketball program, Charlton. But when you look at the graduation percentage at the University of Tennessee from 1974 with the basketball program and the football program, I'm going to say the football program, Charlton, was probably in the mid-40s as far as the graduation ratio.
And see, Big
C, what's the difference? You had a coach who cared.
Yeah.
You had parents who cared. On the football side, let's get to a bowl. Let's get to a conference championship. That's all we care about.
Yeah, and we talked about that too because, and again, it's just like love, you know. Not only is Charlton and Big C the real sports talk, but you can also come here for love advice too because we give out advice for everything, Big C. But I do know, and everyone can relate to this, whether you're male or female. Love
you, man.
Okay, love you too. But think about it this way. If someone loves you, if someone pays attention to you, if someone shows you, if they have an affinity toward you, you tend to want to do more. If you have a dog and you love your animal, that dog will love you back. If you have a partner, that partner will show love back. Now, I know this happens to young black kids because I talk to them all the time, and young white boys and girls too. But when I was a young boy, I did some work at the YMCA, and I'll never forget this because a lot of the times these young kids, they just want a mentor. They want someone to show them the right way. But I'm telling you, when it's young African-American boys and you're big, strong, and fast, these schools will come, they'll seek you out. They will follow you. They will come into your neighborhoods the way Pete Carroll did at USC, the way Jim
signing people now.
Yeah, in high school.
If you remember Matt Barkley,
yeah,
he was committed to SC, the quarterback.
Out of Model Day High School, Santa Ana, California. Yeah.
He was committed in 8th grade to USC. As you get this all over the place now, Charlton, players are committing as early as 8th grade basketball, football, because colleges are going in and recruiting them.
Yeah.
So the only thing they're thinking about is playing sports and being the next great one. Yes, they got to have a GPA, but they're not sitting there talking about being on Dean's list in high school or in college. They just want to get on the court, the field, and play.
Well, see, Big C, I think that's so important, and I'm gonna bring this to our Independence Day because, you know, I talked about Chris Gardner, how he had the movie, and Will Smith played it, The Pursuit of Happiness, and I think even Will Smith's son played the boy in that movie too. But it talked about something that I want you and I to focus on this too, because Jim Brown was onto something, but I think he listened to you because you were talking about it for a long time, and I know you good old boys down in the Southeast with your moonshine and your football 24 hours a day. You guys have this penchant for being good at football, right?
That's like walking into the deepest garden, Charlton, because you see this sign out here say private, so you think that you can have whatever you want.
Okay, well, think about Thurgood Marshall, Frederick Douglass, Rosa Parks. We look at Louis Farrakhan, Malcolm X, Lyndon Baines Johnson, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., President Obama, this push for excellence. And it all equates to one thing, reading. How much do you read? Do you read a new book every year? Do you read a new book every month? Do you read a new book every week? Even if it's a sports magazine or whatever it is, I would love to see this push that Zuckerberg had for Facebook and Steve Jobs has for selling, you know, for what he was doing with computers and Apple. Now, I would love to see the communities of sports that own sports teams make the emphasis on getting young black kids educations. There's younger white kids too, Big C. But for the most part, the educational system is pro-Caucasian. And we know that it may be a painful sight, but the county commissioner talked about that 30 years ago.
Phone or an Android phone and you have earplugs in, you think somebody's reading a script or they're listening to music, okay?
Yeah.
That's what it is. I mean, everybody can operate one of these smartphones nowadays, but they're operating them with earplugs, so the phone is telling them whatever's going on. They can't sit there and articulate or read or simulate whatever's on the phone, but they can sing the song that's playing. But they can't write the song, Charlton. That's the difference. Those are the people who make the money, the people who are writing the song.
Yeah.
But they rather sit there, walk down the street, bobbing their heads, listening to the music, and losing out on life, Charlton.
Well, see, Big C, I think that's important. That's why I want to make a conscious effort that when we have Charlton and Big C Sports, you know, there's Major League Baseball going on all over the country, and it's great if you love baseball. We just finished up on basketball, and we know that football is king, and that's coming around real soon. But I want for me, in my heart, I want each parent, because not every parent has the intellectual ability to say to a coach like a Jim Harbaugh,
every parent has the intellectual ability, regardless of your educational level.
But there may be a sycophants to it also, Big C.
What it comes down to, Charlton, is what's important to the parent.
Yeah.
Is it important that that child can achieve a higher level of education than what they did? Or do they have kids that they utilize as babysitters majority of the time, Charlton? You get a lot of that.
Yeah.
Older siblings taking care of younger siblings because the parent had these children so young, they still want to go out and party and have fun, Charlton. So this child is putting everybody in front of a television, and that's their life. Nobody's picking up a book reading. You know, I remember some of my fondest moments as a child was sitting out on the porch on the weekend with my dad as he was reading the Sunday paper, and I learned how to read by going through the comic pages.
Yeah.
Then I moved it up because he was always reading the sports page and went to that reading it. But to be with my dad, and that's what so many of these young children don't have nowadays, Charlton, is a dad that's there. So they can't go through that rites of passage, Charlton. A woman cannot teach a little boy how to be a man. Remember what I just said. A woman cannot teach a little boy how to be a man to take him through the rites of passage. That's why you see these guys saying, I want somebody just like my mom, because she's doing everything for him.
Yeah.
Instead of saying, I want to take care of somebody like my mom, Charlton.
Well, see, that's important too, Big C. And I know there's a lot of mothers out there that do a fabulous job of raising kids, and I had one myself, and I just understand that if it's going to come a change in our society where we stop allowing these major universities to exploit young black lives, and black lives do matter, and white lives matters, and Native American life matters. All lives matter. But what matters more than anything is learning to understand this system of computers, this new age of computers. The stock market is more important than the NBA, is more important than the NFL, is more important than Major League Baseball, because it doesn't care how big and tall you are. It doesn't care how fast you run the 40. It's an equalizer, Big C.
Stock market history. Go back to 1921 when white America burned down the black stock market.
Yeah, in Oklahoma.
It was creating economic leverage for the black community.
Yeah.
They were getting sovereignty through that.
Yeah.
And the white society didn't want to see that. This is all the way back into the 20s, Charles.
That's the federal government did that, yeah.
Hatred in America has been around for a long time. But if we can find a way to teach economic sovereignty all over again to these young people, if they will take the time to download an app on the computer, they all have them in their home, in their hands, they have that. Download it, learn how to trade, learn how to make money. Everybody's not making professional sports. They're not. Everybody can make money on Wall Street. If you're intelligent about it, you're patient about it, you can do it.
Yeah.
It's free.
Yeah.
It's there. They give it away every day. Wall Street is actually Las Vegas online, Charlton.
Yeah, I agree.
That's actually what it is. It's Las Vegas online. The money's there. You just have to be intelligent and limit yourself in how much you want to make.
And see, Big C, I think that's so powerful. So I know we don't expect it to come from Fox Sports. We don't expect it to come from ESPN because they're sycophants to the athletes. But I hope that when you listen to Charlton and Big C Sports every Monday through Friday at 5 o'clock p.m. Pacific Standard Time worldwide, you can also understand that a little bit of knowledge goes a long way. And the NAACP, and I think they talked about the Minds, a terrible thing to waste, United Negro College Fund. I hope that young kids of all colors, but especially young black boys, start learning the stock market, start learning how it works, because it truly is an equalizer. And Big C, I want to tell everyone that listens to Charlton and Big C Sports that we thank you, we appreciate you, we hope you have a super fantastic 4th of July.